You're watching The Legal Breakdown. Glenn, we have an update on a possible defamation situation that occurred on Fox News. So first off, before we go to the update, I'm going to show you the initial clip.
Yeah, well, I just think it's interesting that all of a sudden people voted for Thomas Massie. Like, I don't remember voting for Thomas Massie with this. I remember voting for Donald Trump to get this bill passed. And I feel like a lot of Americans who voted for Donald Trump feel the same way, especially not only with Thomas Massie, but a lot of the other Republicans who are kind of leaning towards no. They didn't vote for these Congress people. They voted for President Trump. They voted for this mandate. And if you're going to vote no on this, then you're voting along with Democrats, especially Democrats like Maxine Dexter, who was on the Hill today dressed in a white robe, who also visited El Salvador to go see Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who killed Americans. This is something that a lot of people are passionate about passing. If you're not siding with Republicans, then unfortunately you're siding with Democrats.
That Fox guest, Glenn, was Monica Page, who is a Turning Point USA White House correspondent, and she made that defamatory claim suggesting that Kilmar Abrego, quote, killed Americans. Fox News now has come out and issued this statement on air.
Quickly, Fox News tonight would like to make a correction on a statement made by one of our guests last night. As Monica Page pointed out on her X account shortly after her live appearance, she misspoke when she said that Kilmar Abrego Garcia had, quote, killed Americans. He did not. Monica apologized, and we as well do at Fox News at night.
So, Glenn, how does the fact that Trace Gallagher, this Fox anchor, coming out on air and issuing this public apology on behalf of the network, how does that impact the possibility of a defamation suit?
You know, Brian, frankly, it may make it less likely that Abrego Garcia and his lawyers sue either Monica Page or Fox News for the obvious lie that he killed Americans, plural. But it certainly doesn't insulate anybody from a defamation suit being brought. And that only makes sense, right? Because think about if people could go on news networks and lie about somebody killing Americans. I mean, you know, hard to conjure up a more damning lie to tell an enormous audience. And let's face it, the Fox network has an enormous audience. And that is a pretty damning lie to tell. Well, if all you had to do was avoid being held accountable in a court of law for telling that lie, was to at some point say, oh, you know what? I got it wrong. My bad. I take it back. You know, if that insulated people from being sued for defamation, well, that exception would kind of swallow up the entire area of defamation law. There would never be a defamation suit that could be successfully brought. So let me tell you, it helps. It helps that both Monica Page came on and admitted that that was a lie, that for whatever reason she decided to falsely claim that Abrego Garcia had killed Americans. And it also helps Fox somewhat that they admitted that that guest lied and they broadcast that lie and they, retracted it. They made an apology. I think all of that is probably more relevant to whether Abrego Garcia and his lawyers decide to bring a defamation suit than whether that defamation suit will be successful in court. And we can certainly talk about the burden of proof, what Abrego Garcia would have to prove in order to satisfy a jury that indeed he was defamed by Monica Page, and whether the Fox network should have any legal responsibility for it. But, I think this may make it less likely at the end of the day for Abrego Garcia to sue, and goodness knows Abrego Garcia has got a whole lot of legal issues on his plate at the moment that he's contending with.
There's something in there that seems a little contradictory to me, and that is that if you just defame someone but then come out and say, sorry about that, then that would just create a perverse incentive structure where you can say whatever you want, and so long as you apologize after the fact, then that kind of negates everything that you said, and that would obviously be disastrous when it comes to the whole space of defamation. And so with that in mind, how is it that Fox and this Turning Point USA White House correspondent can kind of protect themselves by virtue of doing that exact thing? Like, how would that have any how would them just coming out and apologizing after the fact offer them any legal protection, given the fact that an apology after the fact is not a defense for defamation?
Brian, it won't insulate Monica Page or, by extension, the Fox network against a defamation suit being brought, but it may serve as what we call mitigation. It may sort of reduce the egregious nature of the lie and the damage that the lie did to Abrego Garcia. Here's what I mean by that. You know, the Fox network has a huge viewership. So the minute somebody goes on air as sponsored by, you know, one of the anchors at Fox, who, you know, inferentially is sort of vouching for whatever it is the guest is saying, and the information is spewed into the public square that Abrego Garcia has killed Americans, you know, that will get out into the public square. It will multiply, it will metastasize, it will take hold, and it will grow. So the sooner somebody who realizes the error of their ways, realizes they've told a lie, can get out there and say, my bad, I may have, you know, based this on, you know, not reliable information. I may have inadvertently overstated something in, you know, in the heat of the moment. I retract it and I apologize. That will mitigate the damage that is done by the original lie. So it won't, like I say, insulate Monica Page from a defamation suit, but it may reduce the egregiousness of the lie, which translates into maybe reducing the damage that was done to Abrego Garcia's reputation, maybe even his prospects of a fair trial, because he's pending a criminal trial in Tennessee. And the last thing you want is for potential jurors to hear that, oh, this defendant killed Americans, even though those aren't the charges at issue in his Tennessee prosecution. That is not going to sit well with prospective jurors. Let me hasten to add, jury selection is supposed to weed those people out who may have heard those things, but jury selection is imperfect at best. So it may reduce the amount, for example, of money damages in the event a jury concludes that Monica Page and or the Fox network did indeed defame Abrego Garcia.
I want to turn your attention to Monica's own apology, and she posted this on Twitter. She wrote, "Tonight during an interview on Fox News, I inadvertently said that Kilmar Abrego Garcia, quote, killed Americans. What I meant to say was that he has been connected with gang activity that has devastated the lives of many people and killed an untold number of Americans. He has not been personally linked to the death of anyone, even while being accused of gang activity, including human trafficking, drug trafficking, and spousal abuse. I misspoke, and I apologize for the mistake." Now, I want to train your attention on one line in particular. She said, "What I meant to say was that he has been connected with gang activity that has devastated the lives of many people and killed an untold number of Americans." Glenn, if I'm not mistaken, that also doesn't sound correct. So her apology for possible defamation includes a sentence that may very well also be defamatory unto itself. Can I have your reaction to that sentence inside of her apology?
Yeah, Brian, first of all, you and I are clearly on the same page, and I don't mean Monica Page, because what you just read is exactly what I printed out in preparation for our discussion today. And this sort of boils down to whether Abrego Garcia is a public figure or a private figure. That is part of what's important as we assess this second statement, which could possibly be defamatory. So let me set up the different burdens of proof, because it becomes important when we look at this statement and see if it further supports a defamation suit. If you're a public figure, then you are sort of fair game when it comes to people making comments about you. There's a very high evidentiary burden that has to be proved for a successful defamation suit being brought by a public figure. What's a public figure? Politicians who hold elected office, celebrities, people who seek out fame, who seek out public notoriety. The law considers them public figures. So in order to be successfully sued for lying about defaming a public figure, the public figure, the plaintiff, this would be Abrego Garcia in this instance, would have to prove actual malice, that the person told the lie knowing it was a lie, or they just recklessly disregarded the fact that it may have been a lie. They just didn't care about the truth and just, recklessly spit out these lies about a public figure. That's what has to be proved if you're a public figure. However, if you're not a public figure, the evidentiary burden is much lower. If you're a private figure, and I'm going to argue that Abrego Garcia is in a minute, then all you have to prove is simple negligence, which is much easier to prove than actual malice, that you actually intentionally were spitting out lies about a person. And here is how one goes about proving negligence. You would have to ask questions like, did you do research before you said that this private figure had killed Americans? What was the trustworthiness of the source you were relying on when you said Abrego Garcia has killed Americans? Did you verify that information before you went on the Fox network and spit that out? And how about opposing views? Did you seek them out and take them into account? So you have to be really careful when you're talking about private figures, not public figures. Here's why I say Abrego Garcia is a private figure. And let me apologize to our viewers. I feel like I'm turning this into a legal breakdown law school class, but bear with me for one more minute. The reason I say Abrego Garcia is very likely to be deemed by the court a private figure is because we know his name, right? He has notoriety, but did he endeavor to become famous? Did he want to be a celebrity? Is he an elected official? No. His notoriety is what's called reactive notoriety. In other words, why do we know Abrego Garcia's name? Well, because Donald Trump's ICE agents unlawfully and unconstitutionally deported Abrego Garcia to El Salvador, a place that a judge had ruled he could not be deported to. That's why we know Abrego Garcia's name, not because he was a celebrity or sought out fame, fortune, and notoriety. So he is far more likely to be deemed a private figure. Here's why I went through all that. When you read the apology by Monica Page, and she said, what I meant to say was that he has been connected with gang activity that has devastated the lives of many people and killed an untold number of Americans. Okay, Ms. Page, here's what I want to know. What research did you do before you reached that conclusion and spit it out as part of your apology? What is the trustworthiness of the sources you relied on to make those factual assertions? How did you verify that information, and did you seek out opposing views? All of that is to say that, when I read that apology, the first thing that came to this old prosecutor's mind was, okay, where is the hard, reliable, verifiable evidence of that factual assertion you made when you were apologizing for Abrego Garcia, quote, killing Americans?
So if I'm reading this correctly, she had to apologize because she made a statement that was reckless and defamatory. Is the fact that she then included in her apology another statement that was reckless and defamatory, can that actually hurt her even more, because now it kind of solidifies this idea that this is somebody who will very freely, very casually make these defamatory statements? And so, could the Kilmar Abrego Garcia team include this and say, look, not only did she do it on air, but even when she had time to think about it, even when she was very likely advised by her attorneys that she needed to put out some statement here, when even that statement includes more reckless information, can that actually hurt her even more? Can that actually solidify this idea that she will very casually, very freely make defamatory statements?
Yeah, Brian, there is some real evidentiary synergy between the original defamatory statement and the attempted and badly mangled, I would say, apology. Those two statements would be presented to a jury together, and it would give Abrego Garcia's lawyers lots of ammunition to say, not only was she not sorry, not only was this not a legitimate apology, but she really tried to smear him even in retracting her earlier statement that he killed multiple Americans, plural. So, I think what this all boils down to, Brian, is there will be a viable defamation suit. I can't say it's a winning one, but a viable defamation suit to be filed by Abrego Garcia and his lawyers if they choose to do that. Of course, they may also just choose to send a letter to Monica Page's lawyers and say, listen, we are seriously considering filing a defamation suit, not only based on your original defamatory statement, but your so-called apology, which tended to make matters worse from my client's perspective. But perhaps we can talk about settling this out of court without the need of filing a lawsuit. I have no idea what Abrego Garcia's lawyers will advise him to do or what he will choose to do based on that advice. But, I see that approach being well within the realm of possibilities.
I want to finish off with this, to that exact point. We're talking about this. If this was a normal litigant, that would be one thing. But Kilmar Abrego Garcia is basically fighting for his life, fighting for his right to remain inside the United States, fighting to stay out of some, El Salvadoran prison. And so is he in a position where, is he in a legal position where he has the right to bring this case, first of all? And second of all, in this kind of specific instance where there is already so many legal issues surrounding him, is he in a position just in general? Do you think his lawyers would advise him in general to not pick another fight because he didn't pick it? He would be reacting to a fight that Fox picked, but to get into the mud even further with everything that's going on?
Yeah, two different but related questions. First of all, does he retain the right to bring a defamation lawsuit? Absolutely. Can you imagine, Brian, if somebody had been accused of a crime, even indicted for a crime by the United States of America, and every federal prosecution, Brian, you look at the caption, you look at page 1, and it says, the United States of America versus Abrego Garcia. Doesn't sound like a fair fight, does it? But Abrego Garcia has got one heck of a legal team in his corner. Can you imagine if you just lost all of your rights to bring any civil suit in the event you were wronged, you were victimized, because now you're a charged criminal defendant? That would just incentivize the United States of America, and certainly this Trump administration, to further weaponize criminal prosecutions to help deprive people of the other rights that they might have. So he can absolutely bring a suit. He retains the right to bring a suit. But your second question is, would he? I mean, is it practical for somebody who is facing not only criminal prosecution in Tennessee, albeit in a case that looks like it's already unraveling, given the weakness of the evidence and the pretext under which he was indicted, so the Trump administration could find another reason to facilitate his release and return, not because the court ordered it, but because now we want to prosecute Abrego Garcia. Right. Yeah, let's see how well that prosecution proceeds through the courts. But he not only has that case, he still has a deportation matter hanging over his head. So is he in a position where he's ready to take on a third fight, a defamation suit? I mean, maybe the answer is yes, because when your government acts lawlessly against you, that's what got this ball rolling against Abrego Garcia. An unlawful and unconstitutional deportation. Should you really be deterred in fighting on all fronts when you have been wronged by your own government? That's a decision for Abrego Garcia, his family, and his lawyers to make together.
Okay. Well, we will, of course, stay on top of this. If there are any updates, we'll bring them to you. For those who are watching, if you'd like to follow along, please make sure to subscribe. The links to both of our channels are right here on the screen. It's the best way to support our work and the best way to support independent media more broadly. It's also completely free. So again, if you haven't yet subscribed, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.